Hi, Sean Callahan here for Koppel Chevrolet GMC, and things are rocking in Louisville. We've got transport showing up every day with loads of new inventory, lots of new trucks, SUVs, and crossovers. Our pre-owned inventory is also filling up fast. Our GMC Terrain inventory is really filling up fast, so we're putting special pricing on those right now. This is the time to check out our GMC Terrains, as we've got all models with a great selection of colors at a discounted price. So please stop in or check them out online at koppelcars.com. You'll be glad you did.
How was your drive to school?
Let me tell you, I had to get my iced coffee first. I just can't seem to put it down. My favorite rapper just announced a tour. My phone was buzzing like crazy. I'm so excited. I had to text all my friends right then to talk about it. Then someone started calling me and...
Let's try that again.
I turned my phone off right away. I never drive distracted.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Are you a veteran looking for a new companion animal, a dog, a cat, or maybe something else? The Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs Vets Get Pets program can cover up to $350 of your pet adoption fees. Visit veterans.nebraska.gov/vetsgetpets to learn more about program requirements and how to apply. Want to help support the program? Get your Vets Get Pets specialty license plates from the Nebraska DMV. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This is how we do every day. We be grinding, and if you want to come and text us,
if you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music.
This is Mommy's jam.
Then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Serve Nebraska believes that volunteers are part of what makes Nebraska great. Each year, the Step Forward Awards honors volunteers from across the state who serve their communities in outstanding ways. We hope you'll join us this year at the Step Forward Awards luncheon on October 27th in Omaha. Help us thank volunteers with a celebration to remember. To register, visit serve.nebraska.gov and click Register Now. We hope to see you there. Paid for by Serve Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This week, November 14th through the 18th, is American Education Week. It's a time to celebrate, recognize, and value public education. I'm Jenny Benson, president of the Nebraska State Education Association. Nebraskans know that caring teachers, involved parents, and community support make a difference in a child's learning. Together, we are working to help every student achieve and succeed.
Sponsored by the Nebraska State Education Association, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This is Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Now, here are your hosts, Tom Stevens and Mike Melby.
Welcome in. It is Husker Rewind. Tom Stevens there for here. Mike Melby there. Little echo in my ear, but you can't hear that. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing awesome, Tom. How are you?
Better than Nebraska football, but we kind of knew this was coming. The spread was 31 points, and Michigan wins by 31 points, 34-3. Actually thought that Nebraska played pretty well.
Oh, I did too.
For the most part, defensively. Let's face it, they don't have the kind of talent that the Michigan does or did yesterday. Could have been closer if you bet on the Huskers. If they can, well, I think Michigan will win, but I think Nebraska will cover 31 points. You got to push. You didn't lose any money. You did, unless I guess there were some sites that had it at 30 and a half.
30 and a half. Yeah.
Then you lost. There's a reason I found out that Vegas keeps building hotels, these monstrosities.
Yeah.
They tend to know what they're talking about.
Don't they?
They tend to know what. You want to take a quick call?
Sure.
Hi, who's this?
I think it's John.
Welcome to the Rewind. Hi, John.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Not much. How are you?
I just wanted to I think Nebraska fans should just accept the fact that Mickey Joseph, his campaign has run out. I think it's time to find a top tier coach. I mean, you've got players on the side. And I know they're trying. We lack talent. That's a fact of all matter. But the whole fact that you've got a decent quarterback sitting on the sideline with a hurt pinky, that just tells me he's not too interested in playing football at Nebraska. It's a shame. It's really a shame. Just tired of being a laughing stock, of the nation.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Let's face it. I think Casey Thompson didn't play, not because he didn't want to play. He wanted to play. Mickey Joseph looked at him throw the football before in the pregame of the Minnesota game and said, that guy's not ready. And then they watched him practice the week of the Michigan, this past week, the week of the Michigan game. And they decided, well, we're probably not going to win this game. You don't say that out loud as a coach, but you're probably not going to win that game at Ann Arbor. Get him healthy, get him ready for Wisconsin. Maybe you can pull an upset over Wisconsin or Iowa.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not just a hurt pinky. He can't feel it.
He can't.
It's nerve damage. And if he plays and he does more damage, it could be permanent. So it's not an issue of Casey Thompson's.
He can't grip the ball.
Yeah.
I think the desire to play is not his problem. Nebraska was not going to beat Michigan probably with Joe Namath starting at quarterback. It didn't matter. Tommy Frazier wouldn't have won you that game. It might have been closer. They certainly do need a playmaker at Casey Thompson, and their best chance of scoring. I think they've gone 10 quarters and one touchdown?
Yeah.
Since the second half of the Illinois game.
Yeah.
They need Casey Thompson. It's obvious they can't get Trey Palmer the football without him. But we can hit that a little bit later on. I did want to take that call from John real quickly to open the show, Husker Rewind. But let's get to the starting gate. We try to hit as many topics as we can in the show, and to let you know what's going on in the show, here's Mike Melvin.
Got one or two topics. Husker hoops tipped off their seasons, both men's and women's, last Monday. Women's team knocked off Omaha 100-36. Izzy Bourne led the way with 21 points. Four other Huskers scored in double figures. Allison Wider had 19, Betty Kroll 18, Alexis Markowski 13, Annika Stewart 10. First time in program history, every player hit a three that played, and the team scored 100 points, and they did not attempt a free throw. That's right. They did not attempt a free throw. And then Husker women's hoops on Friday night at home knocked off Houston Baptist. I believe that one was
78-49.
There you go. Thank you. Just as I was
for some reason, I just wrote that down. I don't know why. That's the reason I knew that.
Men's team winds up 2-0 on the season. That is the first time in the Fred Hoiberg era that Nebraska is 2-0. They beat Maine 79-66 and then Omaha 75-61. Huskers play St. John's this coming Thursday, and that one is out in New York at 5:30. On Monday of this last week, Colts owner Jim Irsay vigorously defended his rather stunning decision to hire former Colts lineman Jeff Saturday as the team's head coach this Saturday.
Isn't that very odd? I mean, Saturday is a good commentator on ESPN.
Yeah.
But he hasn't been coaching for a while. And just to think that you can go from, I guess Herm Edwards did it and did it pretty well for a while, going from ESPN to coaching Arizona State, but then he got fired.
Well, but you got to, the thing is, Jeff Saturday's never coached at a level above high school, ever. That said, the Colts are down one at Vegas with 1:51 left in the third.
Brilliant move hiring Jeff Saturday. I knew it all along. It was a great move.
Last Saturday night, early Sunday morning, Nebraska safety Miles Farmer cited for DUI after the Huskers lost to Minnesota, pulled over for a failure to signal around 10th and P, 12:30 in the morning. Blood alcohol content was 0.123. It was suspended for last week's game. He will face other internal discipline as well as the penalties he's going to face through the legal system. Wednesday, Brooklyn Nets hire former Kansas guard Jock Vaughn as their new head coach after Steve Nash was fired back on November 1st. Wednesday, Husker volleyball team unveiled the number one recruiting class in the country for the second time in 3 years. 5 players signed their letter of intent. Huskers got the number 1 ranked center, Bergen Riley, number 1 ranked libero, Laney Choboy, number 2 outside hitter in Harper Murray, number 3 middle blocker in Andy Jackson, and the 15th overall ranked player in the class, Caroline Jervicius.
When's John Cook going to start recruiting? Come on.
I know.
Get off your butt and do something. Come on.
Can't believe it. Now,
I wonder how close it is to the greatest recruiting class ever in volleyball. I mean, it's got to be up there.
We'll go back 2 years. We had 3 different publications name a different number 1 high school recruit.
That's
all 3 of them signed with Nebraska.
Was that the Alec, Lonstein,
that was
Krause?
No, that was Batenhorst, Lexi Rodriguez, and Lindsey Krause.
Yeah. Alec wouldn't have been in that one. But
So-
yeah, you're right. I mean, it's incredible, but you almost wonder if John Cook going forward might adjust his recruiting to take not all freshmen, take one big time transfer. Like where would they be? Where would they be without a Caitlin Horde right now? I mean, maybe you save one of those spots for a Caitlin Horde every year.
Yeah, true.
Because that's one of the reasons I think Wisconsin won the national championship. All of their starters were over 40.
Yeah.
I mean, they had been playing volleyball forever.
They had. COVID year helped them out quite a bit. Yeah. On Wednesday, men's hoop team announced that Eli Rice is going to be their lone signee right now. 3-star will play this season at IMG Academy in Florida. Husker women's hoops signed 2 on Wednesday. Each have won their state's Gatorade Player of the Year honor. Logan Nisley from Bismarck, North Dakota, and Natalie Potts from St. Louis, Missouri. Baseball signs a class of just 9. Will Bolt's current roster currently sits at 46 players. He needs to be down to 39 by the time the season starts in mid-February. So that's going to be really, really interesting. Some guys are probably going to go to JUCO, and some other guys are going to have some tough conversations.
Yep.
And then volleyball on the court, Nebraska absolutely destroyed Iowa 25-16, 17, and 7 on Friday night.
Not going well tonight, though.
300th consecutive sellout for Nebraska women's volleyball. That is far and away the best in the sport. And not going well. They lose 31-29.
Down 4-3 in the third, already lost the first 2 sets.
They lost the first 2 sets. They were up 9-3 in the second, and then ultimately lost 25-21. So
they
Nebraska
need a setter.
volleyball.
I mean, they desperately need a big-time setter. We were saying before the show, could you imagine this team and Kelly Hunter, if Kelly Hunter were on this team? That's what they're missing. But they don't have that. And they're trying the 6-2. We'll see where it goes. And they're very young. They're a young volleyball team, and they've gotten better. But they're up against Ohio State. Ohio State hasn't lost a match since they lost to Nebraska on September 24th.
Yep.
So they're facing a really tough challenge. We knew that going in. And by the way, we'll have Tanya Taki coming up here next hour to talk a little Husker volleyball. Eric Strickland this hour. Let's get to the presser. We were talking to John mentioned about the quarterback situation. This is Mickey Joseph talking about Casey and how much more effective the team could be when Casey gets back.
Well, Casey's a starter, so you get more offense when Casey's out there because he's a starter.
I could tell that Mickey just didn't want to talk after that game. He was like, we lost 34-3. What do you want me to say? They're really good. And by the way, Jim Harbaugh, I think he can get off my lawn. I'm gonna make that nomination early on. Last week he was hugging our coach to death, like hugging the stuffing out of him. PJ Fleck was doing that. This week, Harbaugh doesn't even shake the hand. I mean, he barely walks by, and you need something in between. PJ Fleck, he got up my lawn because I begged him to last week after hugging the stuffing out of our head coach, and this week it's just Harbaugh's barely shook the hand of Mickey Joseph. And I just thought, what a jerk. I don't like that guy.
I've never liked that guy, but whatever.
But anyway, he was in no mood to answer a lot of questions. And yeah, he that's the right answer. Hey, Casey's a starter. There's a reason he's the starter. But there's also a concern that Nebraska, for a number of years, has not been able to develop a backup quarterback for one reason or another.
Well, part of the reason is the inability of Scott Frost to recruit somebody and tell them they have a fair shot coming in against Adrian Martinez, because, I mean, the starting job was gift wrap to Adrian for 4 years. So how do you tell a true freshman, you can come in and compete, but you're not going to start? Right. I mean, unless you're Hendon Hooker or CJ Stroud or Quentin Ewers, And even then, with the way Frost handled Martinez, I don't think he would have. I seriously think it still would have been Martinez.
And let's face it, Logan Smothers was injured. He mentioned that Logan was injured. He's been dealing with an injury. A lot of people wanted Logan to be the starter over Chubba Purdy. I'm not sure either one are very ready to play in this league. Neither one are Casey Thompson, and neither are ready to play at a high level in the Big Ten. They
Absolutely agree.
This is Mickey Joseph talking about the injury of Casey Thompson.
Yes, and it's, like you said, it's up to Casey. He still have some nerve damage in his pinky, so we'll see how Casey feels tomorrow. I'm sure if I look at my phone, he's probably already texted me and called me that he's ready to play next week. So we'll take it day by day with Casey. We won't put Casey out there unless he can play at a high level.
Well, and that's the key thing. You don't want to put a player out there that is injured that could potentially become injured worse, especially with nerve damage. You're talking potential for permanent, and that's nothing you want to have happen to him. And when to start the show off, we had John on, and he had mentioned that he's tired of Mickey Joseph and his audition's over, and we just need to move on and hire a coach. And that's going to happen after the Iowa game.
Right.
I mean, Mickey Joseph is going to still be the interim head coach for the next 2 weeks, regardless of whether or not Trev Alberts has hired somebody or not. It's not going to get announced. Nothing's going to happen publicly until after the Iowa game. It's not a matter of we're tired of Mickey Joseph, we're going to replace him right now and see if we can't win those. No, not going to happen.
I think he's got his guy, or
I do too.
He's narrowed in on his guy, and we'll do our coaching carousel stock market coaching search a little bit later on. This is Mickey Joseph in the presser talking about Michigan in the trenches. I think it's where Nebraska would love to be at some point.
They're really good on the O-line and the defensive line. That's what Big Ten, really good Big Ten teams look like. With the O-line and D-line, they move people and they get pushed back on defense. It's a really good football team.
Here he is again, crediting Michigan.
Well, like you said, they're good in everything that they do. So it's a really solid football team. Teams that have been on the really good teams, they would have hung in there. I don't know if they would have won, but they would have hung in there.
You can hear it in the voice of Mickey Joseph. Like, give me some time to do this. You're not going to give me this time because I haven't won any games or enough games. But you can tell in his voice he wants this gig. I think I'm hearing in his voice, man, if you give me some time, give me a chance to recruit, we could be really good. I'm confident I can get players here. I think he knows that he's not going to be the head coach. I think he also knows that if he wants to be a coach on the staff, he can be that. It'll be interesting to see what he decides.
Very true, because the rumors were out there a couple of weeks ago that Arizona State had reached out to inquire his thoughts on possibly becoming the new head coach to replace Herm Edwards down there, and there's all kinds of. I mean, we had the rumor on Friday that Deion Sanders is in final contract negotiations, and
Strick shut that down pretty quickly, didn't he?
Yeah, it's pretty easy when your ex-wife was Deion's ex-wife as well. So
they're friends, and
they've been friends
he
for a long
literally
time.
within 2 minutes texted Deion and got an answer. No, not gonna do it. Wouldn't be prudent.
I think it was something along the lines of "no truth to the rumor, my brother."
Here's Mickey Joseph saying that a few guys were sick this week in practice.
No, I don't think we had some kids down sick, but I don't think Logan was one of them. We had about 3 or 4 downs with the stomach virus.
All right. Let's see. Let's just go through a few of them. They're all short answers, as you can tell, so it won't take very long for Mickey to get through this press conference. I think the whole thing lasted maybe 5 minutes. Talking about Anthony Grant, Mickey Joseph.
I thought it was better. I thought he was better, but it wasn't much room in there. We wasn't getting much push off the line of scrimmage. So just telling the backs, once you get in, you see it, you got to go because it's not going to stay open very long. Well, credit to Michigan.
And that's the key thing is plant your foot and go north or south. The east-west stuff does not work against a defense like Michigan's. And there were a couple of runs where Anthony did that. There were a couple of runs that he did not do that. It's one of those that I think it was Cooper Jewett that was in at the end of the game, and he learned that very quickly, I think, on the last play of the game. He could have cut and gone north and gotten 4 or 5 yards, and he tried to go to the east, and instead he lost a yard or two. So
Mickey Joseph here saying the team is not going to quit.
Well, we got to have some pride. We got Wisconsin and Iowa left, so we got to have some pride, and we got to continue just to come to work tomorrow and try to get a game plan to help us be successful and execute the game plan. But we got to keep going. We're not going to quit.
Colton Feast, I believe, is the player in the postgame last night that said essentially, this group of people is not going to be together next year. We're not all going to be here, players and coaches. There's going to be some numbers of people that leave, players to other schools and or graduating, and I would envision no more than 3 of this coaching staff are going to be back, regardless of who the new head coach is. I mean, even if they name Mickey the head coach, I don't think there's going to be more than 2 that he would keep.
Yeah, I would see. I could see Brian Applewhite, and I could see Bill Bush.
Yeah,
and that's about it.
Travis Fisher, in my mind, is one of the best secondary coaches.
Yeah,
in
you
the
could make
country.
an argument for Rude. I think Barrett Rude's a good coach and will land on his feet somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think Travis Fisher is a great coach. But, you have your own tastes as a coach of who fits on your staff. And who knows what Mickey is thinking in that regard. I mean, we're all just guessing.
Yeah.
We have no idea. Mickey talking about recruiting being the current problem with this team.
Recruiting. We have to recruit better. Yeah. Every position. You're 3-7. Every position. We have to recruit better as a staff. And we will.
And there are a lot of people that say, well, you don't need 4 stars. You don't need 5 stars. You just need to develop. Take all guys from Nebraska and just develop them.
I'm related to a couple of people that say that.
And I'm not saying it's completely untrue. Development, there is a part of it. Iowa's been doing it for years. They develop guys. They take a lot of 3-star guys, but they're still 3-star guys. They're not 2-star guys. And Wisconsin has done that for years. They've taken 3-star guys and they develop at a very high level. But I don't think the target should be Iowa or Wisconsin or Purdue or Illinois.
No, you just played the target.
You played the target. Michigan, Ohio State. You should still want to win a Big Ten title, and that means competing for a national title if you do that. And I'm not saying recruit to Ohio State's caliber tomorrow, but certainly recruit the best that you can, get a lot more Trey Palmers, and develop them at the same time. I honestly don't think with name, image, and likeness that Nebraska is that far away. I think that it's very feasible. You've got maybe the best training facility in the country coming in that both men and women at the University of Athletes at the University of Nebraska can share. It's going to be a great developmental building, maybe the last of its kind in college football, I'm told, from Brandon Stein, because all that money is going to NIL in the future. Nebraska started building it, and then NIL came along. Yep. And now you've got that little extra piece to show the neighbors when they come by, and the neighbors being recruiting, that you get the neighbors to stay. So I think Nebraska's still got some built-in advantages. I think development is going to have to be a big key, but also you got to recruit. You got to recruit at the highest level and then develop.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And on the development side, our strength and conditioning, I don't care how many times guys throw up in practice. What I care about is whether we are playing Michigan, Georgia Southern, or North Dakota, we can go toe-to-toe with their lines.
Mm.
And I don't know that, especially the offensive line, we owned anybody this year. Not even North Dakota.
But they did get better. They got dramatically better. And I still point to this. I mean, the Georgia State game was a complete embarrassment.
Mm-hmm.
But compare the tackling against Michigan, a much better team than Georgia State yesterday.
Georgia Southern, yeah.
Or Georgia Southern, I'm sorry. Compare it to what we've seen recently in the Minnesota game. Mo Ibrahim for 18 yards in the first half.
Yeah. And from a defensive standpoint, yeah, there's been tremendous amount of improvement since Eric Shenander's no longer a part of the program. But I'm just talking as a whole, specifically the offensive line. They haven't won the line of scrimmage in any game.
No.
And that's Zach Duvall's fault.
Well,
who's the strength and conditioning coach?
I think certainly part of it is, part of it's recruiting, part of it's development, part of it is the coaching those guys have gotten, and part of it is the weight room. I think that you can blame, everybody gets a share of the blame, and maybe part of the players. The players have to play better as well.
Yeah.
Cam Jurgens was a really good player who made it into the NFL, so it's not like they haven't had anybody on the offensive line. I go back, to Tanner and Farmer. I mean, the Farmer was a good player, and they had some really good players in year number 1 under Frost along the offensive line. But you're right, they haven't gotten enough of them, and they haven't developed enough Cam Jurgens. They haven't recruited them and developed them.
Nope. Yeah, Gerald Foster on that first
Foster
year.
and Farmer, those guys were really good, and that was the last time you had an 1,000-yard rusher. And I think Grant's going to get there. He's still close. I think he'll get there in the final 2 games,
hopefully,
with a bad offensive line.
Yeah.
So that's saying something. That he's going to do it with a bad offensive line. But you're right. The offensive line, Nebraska's got it. If you want to win in this league, you have to win in the trenches.
Yeah.
Or at least be as good as the Minnesotas, the Illinois, the Wisconsins in this league, up to par with them. And Nebraska's not close in the trenches to win the West. I want to start there. I'd like to ultimately get to where Ohio State is, where Michigan is, where Penn State is. Hell, that would be nice. But you just start in the trenches. If you're the next coach, that's where you have to start, I think, building Nebraska.
Absolutely. Be interesting to ask Eric Strickland that question, too.
Let's ask Eric Strickland that question. We're going to talk both football and basketball. Nebraska is 2-0 in basketball. Have you heard the news?
I have.
Have you heard the news? Eric Strickland played for Nebraska in basketball.
Did he?
He calls the game for BTN Plus. Both games. Yeah.
Pretty damn well,
and he's pretty good at it. So we'll get his thoughts on Nebraska hoops, but he also talks daily about Nebraska football on his own show on the block. So we'll talk to Eric Strickland, the Hall of Famer. Coming up next, he's Mike Melby. I'm Tom Stevens. It's Husker Rewind.
This is Dan Friedman. Between 2010 and 2019, distracted driving caused more than 40,000 car crashes in Nebraska, resulting in over 14,000 severe injuries and deaths. Please keep your eyes on the road. If you have a smartphone, put it away while you're behind the wheel. It will help keep our community safe and secure. This message is brought to you by Friedman Law Offices, helping injured people. It's what we do. It's all we do. Find us at friedmanlaw.com today.
Early break with Sip and Jake.
It's not his job to find the guy that's most exciting to the fan base and that the fan base is going to sign off on. That's something that he should consider in the mix. But if he believes that if Trev Alberts believes that Mickey is the best coach, do you still hire him at 3-9? That's the question, right?
Early break with Sip and Jake from 6 to 8 every weekday morning on 93.7 The Ticket.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it twice a day.
I get it. Slip it, cuff it, check it in the morning and before dinner.
I get it. Slip it, cuff it, check it, and share it with my doctor. Nearly 1 in 2 U.S. adults have high blood pressure. That's why it's important to self-monitor your blood pressure in 4 easy-to-remember steps. It starts with a monitor.
Now that I know my blood pressure numbers, I talked with my doctor. We're getting those numbers down.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it.
Be next to talk to your doctor about your blood pressure numbers. Get down with your blood pressure. Self-monitoring is power. Learn more at manageyourbp.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the American Heart Association, and the American Medical Association, in partnership with the Office of Minority Health and Health Resources and Services Administration.
Neil Armstrong waited 6 hours and 39 minutes to step onto the surface of the moon. Jackie Robinson waited 20 months to play his first game with the Brooklyn Dodgers. And even DiCaprio had to wait 22 years to win an Oscar. You can wait until your destination. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
My simple solution to the problem was remove people from the scene and help them feel safer.
In response to attacks against Asian Americans, Maddie Park raised over $250,000 to donate cab rides to the Asian community.
There is so much more work to be done. We really need to come together and tackle this issue as a community.
Support the Asian community. Learn how at lovehasnolabels.com. Brought to you by Love Has No Labels and the Ad Council.
We're in the service.
Rewind it back.
Back to the Sunday Rewind with Tom and Mike on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the Husker Rewind here on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. I'm Mike Belby. That's Tom Stevens. And joining us on the Honda of Lincoln hotline is Husker Hall of Famer, 9-year NBA vet, co-host of On the Block with Strick and Nate, Mr. Eric Strickland. Eric, welcome to the Husker Rewind. And I want to start off with what Tom and I were just talking about. Where does Nebraska football start? Whoever their new head coach is going to be, where do they need to address first? What position group?
Well, I think first of all they need to definitely address. Oh, well, how you guys doing? I apologize. I was quick to jump into the topic. It was a great question, by the way. But I would venture to say that I think the line has. I'm listening, and I mean I'm not just talking about the offense. I'm talking about both line groups. I mean I think they need to go out and just get some, just savage type guys that are just hungry.
Right.
And the reason I say that, because I literally watched the difference of what it looks like when our team comes out, both offensively and defensively on the front line. And I watched that Texas and TCU game, and they're not known for that. But for whatever reason, they looked faster, stronger, getting pushed. It was just phenomenal. And so I just don't see that from our side. So I think that's definitely something that needs to be addressed. I think we need to figure out this quarterback situation. I personally don't think Purdy's the guy. He's still young, so I'm not going to totally bash on that. I don't know if Smothers is the guy. I haven't seen much on the other guys, and I'm starting to wonder why now and trying to say, like, look, it's similar to like when we're in basketball, guys. Like, if the first team and the second team isn't giving energy or they're not really producing or they're not doing anything, sometimes a coach will just say, if I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose with guys that are at least want to be out there.
Right.
And they'll put the guys at the end of the bench out there. And sometimes it would happen to where those guys and that energy can get you back into a game. And it can also wake up a team, to just say that things aren't just all hunky-dory and just the status quo. So that's just some of the things I think about sometimes. I would say it would start at that group.
Talking to the Hall of Famer, Eric Strickland, played basketball for Nebraska and Danny Nee back in the glory years. I look at the West in football, Eric, and I know the divisions are eventually going away, but Nebraska was a one-score game with Purdue, and they might win the division. It became a blowout in the second half against Illinois, but they competed with Illinois. They certainly could have won the Minnesota game. I expect them to compete against Wisconsin. If you can win, it doesn't feel like, maybe they're a long ways from winning the Big Ten, but they're not a long ways in my mind of winning the West. What do you think?
That's why I thought it was really important this year to shore up areas that had a little bit of trouble in them, or to close up some of those holes. Because if they could have did that, whoever comes in, whoever takes over, you get a good recruit group. You bring some of those new guys and energy in, and then you really start to find out and figure it out in your way and in your style, that you can make a run and then work on the recruiting part of it and really just set your mind out 3 to 5 years before you can really start really competing at the next level. I was hoping that's what I would see. But now I'm just looking across the board, and it's like having a bad poker hand where sometimes you just want to give all 5 of them cards back, right? That's what it feels like to me. It's hard to put it all together. Yes, they've competed. Yes, I've seen some better signs. Yes, there are flashes, but sometimes I'm just trying to figure out, how can we correct this issue? And I just don't know. And I think it's really got to start up front. Similar if you're building, a Lego house or a house of cards. You start with your foundation. I think the foundation is the up front guys, and I just don't know if we've got the right mix for that.
Hey, Eric Strickland joining us here on the Husker Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com. Husker Hall of Famer, 9-year NBA vet. Eric, do you think the coaching search is almost over or over for Trev Alberts, and he's simply going to wait until, because that's what we know is going to happen. He's not going to announce anything until after the Iowa game in a couple of weeks. Do you think he's settled on a guy or down to one or two guys?
I think he is. I think he is. It's kind of like one of those situations where you're in a war and the media may be talking, pundits may be speaking, there's speculation out there, but the generals are real quiet. You know, sometimes you'll see the generals come out and they'll talk about different things. They'll talk about the landscape of whatever is going on in foreign soils and all of the diplomatic stuff that's going on. But when it's really time to get for action, the generals get quiet. You don't hear them talking, right?
Yep, exactly.
So I think he's either there or he's real close. And I mean, when I say close, it's down to a couple people.
Okay, so along those lines, do you ever take what Coach Joseph says in a press conference and go, that almost seems like foreshadowing? When he was asked about how do they get better, etc., he, like, short answer, recruiting, and we're going to do that. We got to get guys. We're going, like, he's talking like he is going to be back next year. It's just, you know, my mind of rumor mills is going, Mickey knows he's going to be on the staff next year. He probably knows who the new head coach is going to be. I that's me reading into it. Do you get that same feeling?
Yeah, I can sense something similar. I can sense that there's some retention, or there's been discussion, and it could even be. And listen, that's allegedly. I'm not saying that I know anything about this, so I'm not speaking on it from that standpoint. But there could have been some conversation between Trev and the next coach as to some retention type situations. I think there's a few people potentially in those rooms where there probably could be some retention. But I think Mickey's one of them.
Is there anybody out there? You shut down the Deion Sanders. You shut down the Deion Sanders stuff last week. Is there anybody out there that excites you? A name that would excite you for Nebraska football?
Man, Sarkisian.
Huh?
Sark, okay.
Huh? He ain't going nowhere. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't know too much about Aranda, but a lot of people keep speaking about him and what they think, you know, he can be done. But, you know, that's kind of tapering off a little bit, kind of seeing what's happening with Baylor. People are talking about Campbell, Leipold. I just don't know. I don't know, because what I do know is that Nebraska is a unique place, and you have to have a unique skill set. You have to be able to be like to sell when it doesn't look like you have a lot of not power, but what's the word I'm looking for? You have a lot of not resources, because they're there, but the landscape don't look sexy.
No.
You know what I'm saying? But there's understanding, and it's very similar to like when I was in school, like having to sell Nebraska to a Mikey Moore, or, you know, confirming why it's important for Tehran. You know, guys like having discussions with the family of Ty Webster as to why they should let their son be here. You know what I'm saying? Those things are quite important. And it takes a skill set to do that, to have somebody in that can sell that. And if anybody's looking for an exit strategy, they're not the one, because they have to want it. It has to be really ingrained in them that they want to be here. And that's why I think Mickey can do it. He has success. That's why I think he needs to be retained, because he's shown that he can do that where most can't. So that's kind of how I would view it.
Okay, so I want to kind of switch gears and change sports on you a little bit, because one guy who made it abundantly clear in the preseason that he wants to be here past this season is Fred Hoiberg. And for the first time in his coaching career here at Nebraska, they're off to a 2-0 start. They haven't looked spectacular, yet they've looked totally different from his first 3 teams. Mainly the focus on rebounding, offensive rebounding, and just defensive prowess and finding ways to grind and just get it done. That was something they couldn't do against, mid-level or low-level competition the first 3 years. It's 2 games, but it's 2 games that he hadn't put together in his career here yet. What are your thoughts on Coach Hoiberg and this year's team and the new philosophy?
Well, at least with Coach Hoiberg now, what I can see that I hadn't seen across the board in men's sport, I think I can identify it in the women's, but I couldn't see it in the men's, and that's identity. I hear Mickey talking about it, but that's not there yet. That's going to take time. But he understands now the type, the style, the look, the archetypes that work for the style that he and the way that he wants to play that could have success. And so I can start to see that now starting to develop. The other thing I've noticed is that he's created a tough to scout type of team, because on any given night it can be any one of them from 1 to 9. It could be someone different every night. Yes, you're going to have some consistencies probably with Greasel and probably with Vandermill, but from Tamanaga to Gary to Breidenbach to Walker to Blaze Keita, all the rest of them, C.J. Wilcher, you may just see flashes, and one night it's Tamanaga, and then the next night it's Gary, and then the next night it's Wilcher, and then the next night it's Greasel.
To your point, Tamanaga and Gary go scoreless after scoring, combining for 43 in the first game, and Nebraska's. It's exciting to see. I mean, I'm probably as big of, if not, I'm a bigger basketball fan than I am a football fan for Nebraska sports, and to me, it's just exciting to see. And I love Casey Tamanaga's. The way he comes across on the court this year is so different than last year. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah. And I have noticed that. And what I can say also is that you can tell that he's had discussions with them, because it seems that people understand their roles, like Denham Dawson. It's like they're not doing anything outside of what they know their role is to do. Right?
Well, exactly.
And they're understanding when they step outside of their role and they're doing something outside of what they're trying to do as a unit and as a team. And you can see them, dang it, I shouldn't have did that. Dang, that was bad. I got to correct that. And you see them correct it. That's the difference from what I've seen in this team and the ones that I saw last year.
Yeah,
and it would be like a continuum of what they kept doing that sent them down the rabbit hole. It's crazy.
It feels like they're okay winning ugly. It feels like a Rutgers type of team, that if we have to beat you with all the extra possessions defensively and rebounding and diving for loose balls, that's the way we're going to do it. We're willing to win ugly. Last year's team didn't seem to have that makeup.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It should be fun. It'll be a fun year. Thanks for joining us, Husker Hall of Famer, the hoopster. Eric Strickland, played 9 years in the NBA. Love your show. Love you. You're the man.
Love you guys, man. Always. Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Right, there he is.
Thanks for
Eric
coming
Strickland,
on,
from On the Block with Nate. Good stuff. Always good to talk to Strick. Let's get the break. Come back with a little more hoops talk.
I think so.
Yeah, let's talk a little more hoops. Kind of lean into what some of the stuff Eric was saying about this year's team. What do you expect from this year's team? What do you want from this year's team? Knowing their limitations, knowing they're not going to always be pretty.
31-0, number one ranking, and number one seed in the tournament. That's all I want.
It seems reasonable to me. Let's talk about it coming up next. It's Husker Rewind. He's Mike Melby. I'm Tom Stevens.
Early break with Sip and Jake.
It's not his job to find the guy that's most exciting to the fan base and that the fan base is going to sign off on. That's something that he should consider in the mix. But if he believes that Mickey, if Trev Alberts believes that Mickey is the best coach, do you still hire him at 3-9? That's the question, right?
Early Break with Sip and Jake from 6 to 8 every weekday morning on 93.7 The Ticket.
Hi, Sean Callahan here for Koppel Chevrolet GMC, and things are rocking in Louisville. We've got transport showing up every day with loads of new inventory, lots of new trucks, SUVs, and crossovers. Our pre-owned inventory is also filling up fast. Our GMC Terrain inventory is really filling up fast, so we're putting special pricing on those right now. This is the time to check out our GMC Terrains, as we've got all models with a great selection of colors at a discounted price. So please stop in or check them out online at koppelcars.com. You'll be glad you did.
This is the Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back. Tom Stevens here. Mike Melby there. Husker Rewind every Sunday, 5 to 7. Huskers hanging around, man. They lost the first two sets. It didn't take long. They battled Ohio State, but Ohio State, as we mentioned, hasn't lost since Nebraska beat them on September 24th here at the Devaney Center. And now we're in set number 3. Nebraska has taken a 27-26 lead. But it's tough sledding tonight. We'll talk a little Husker volleyball with Tanya Taki in the next half hour or so. I'm guessing the match will not be over by then, especially if it goes 5 sets. It'll be over if Ohio State wins it in a couple points here. But if they don't get by Nebraska here, this has a feeling of a match that could go a while, Mike.
Oh, it really does. It really does. I just told you off the air. I said, if they win set 3, I think they win the match.
Ohio State, but it's now tied at 27.
Yeah, now tied at 27.
Every set has just been really, really tough sledding for Nebraska. It feels like Nebraska is just a setter away. They've got all the ingredients, except for 2 things that I see. They don't have the experience. They probably could use another Caitlin Horde. They probably could, use somebody that's been around the block a few times that are, a Dana Retke type of player. They have a lot of superstars, but they're all really young and they don't set it very well. One of the reasons they've gone to the 5-2. So,
yep,
it's just where it is. Nebraska basketball. It was not always pretty against Omaha, but Omaha is a team that took Kansas to the last 20 minutes of that game, and it was fairly close. Omaha's got some talent.
They do, and they've got a hell of a coach. Crutchfield is he's gonna get them, I think, into the NCAA tournament in a couple of years. That's a great. If he's not an alum, he's not coaching in the Summit League right now.
To your point, and Strick's point, that it could be a different person every night. CJ Wilcher, who has not played well up until last Thursday night, had 21 points in Lincoln. I think that is his career high. 75-61, Nebraska wins over Omaha. CJ is 8 of 12 with all that work in the gym shooting extra threes. He knocked down 4 of them in that game, and he looked really good.
He did, and it was funny because you expected, after reading the articles preseason about CJ Wilcher and what he did last year meditation-wise, which really helped him. I mean, he went on a tear and hit 47% of his threes over the course of the last 15, 18 games last year after really struggling. And I was expecting him to come out in the exhibition games and just, continue on that torrid pace. And he really struggled those first 3 games. And then when the guy's feeling it, when he's catching the ball and you can tell he's already going up for the shot as he's catching the ball, even though he's got a dude in his face and he drains it.
Yeah. And
he did that against Omaha.
He's got that high arching shot,
Yeah.
the kind of an old-timey shot, if you want to say. For me, you don't see a lot of guys shoot jumpers the way he does, but it's very effective and it's very pretty. Nebraska shoots 50% from the field, 25 of 50 from the field. They were 18 of 31 on free throws. That's a problem. Only 58% in league play. You're going to have to shoot 70 to 75% to win those types of games that Nebraska will be in. They were 7 of 19 from 3, 36%. They forced 16 Omaha turnovers. Omaha only shot 41% from the field. They were 29% from 3. Emmanuel Bandamel, 6 of 11 with 18 points. Blaze Keita had a really nice game, 9 points, 12 rebounds. There might be a benefit to having Derek sit out these games. You're getting more minutes to Blaze Keita.
You are, and the one thing that is almost always super prevalent with most junior college players, it takes them 5 games, 8 games, 12 games to get the feel for. This isn't junior college. I know he was the JC Player of the Year 2 years ago. I know that. I know he's got tons of talent, tons of upside, but he wasn't playing against Big Ten competition.
Right.
He wasn't playing major college Division I basketball. And that's what, granted, they're not going to go, real deep in the NCAA tournament, probably won't make the NCAA tournament in Maine and Omaha, but you got to get your feet wet. And he's playing against better competition, even against those 2 schools, than he did when he was in junior college.
Yeah.
So to have him bounce back after what seemed like a game that he just didn't really find any rhythm, didn't find much against Maine, to come back, the key thing, 12 rebounds, that is what Strick talked about it.
Yeah.
These guys know what their role is. Obviously, Juwan Gary's is to go get offensive boards.
Yeah.
He had 8 of them against Maine, and there were probably half the games last year, Nebraska didn't have 8 offensive rebounds.
Right.
And he had 8 by himself. Blaze Keita's role, go get rebounds. Finish. Be a defensive presence in the paint. And he checked all 3 of those boxes.
If Blaze wants to know what Hoiberg wants from him, I hope Hoiberg shows the tape of that game over and over to him.
Yeah.
That's what I want. A double-double or a near double-double every night. Give me 9 rebounds or 9 points and 12 rebounds, almost a double-double. And he was 4 of 6 from the field. Again, he's not getting a ton of minutes yet, but he's trying to work his way into the action. There were some matchups against Maine. He didn't have anybody to guard because the guy that he was guarding was playing way out on the 3-point line. That probably suits Derek Walker a little bit more. Yeah. And I think Derek is going to be out for several more games. We're all speculating on what it is. They haven't told us. They're saying healthcare reasons for Derek Walker. But I would expect at least another 8 to 10. It might be Big Ten play before you see Derek Walker. Nebraska could benefit if they could win a lot of those games and also get Blaze Keita up to speed. So I think there could be a benefit. Nebraska, of course, Denham Dawson, I thought he showed up 8 points. He hit a 3. He gave you that extra grit that you're looking for.
Well, and he's another one. Denham, here's your role. Come in and make an impact on the game on the defensive end of the floor. And if the offense comes to you, do what you do.
David Rivers is a much better athlete than David Rivers, but that type of player, just a garbage type of guy that will play defense, get some putbacks.
Yeah.
And you see at the end of the game, maybe he's got 8 points and 8 rebounds.
Yeah.
We'll take that.
Well, and I remember the post game after the Maine game, and Fred Hoiberg is like, he's looking at his sheet and he's like, is this a type like Denham didn't even take a shot and he only had 1 rebound, but man, did he affect the game. And then lo and behold, and I remember thinking, okay, I was at the game and I didn't think he affected it that much, but whatever. And lo and behold, go back and rewatched it. And it's like, okay, so yeah, he did. He was in passing lanes. He did what he was supposed to do defensively. And then he comes up with just a super solid performance. If you could get a night like that out of Denham Dawson on an every game basis, and maybe not 8 points, maybe he's going to get 3, 4, 5, 6 points. He's not going to be a guy that's going to lead you in scoring very often, but he's going to have nights where he does probably crack double figures. But man, his effort on the defensive side and his effort to go get rebounds is just phenomenal. It's something that Nebraska's been lacking for a while. And Juwan Gary, that's a whole other discussion on effort. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, both those guys have similar games a little bit. Yeah. Juwan's going to score more than Denham Dawson is, but he's been playing basketball for a while longer. He's quite a bit older. Hoiberg had nice things to say about Jamarcus Lawrence as well, who's known as a shooter coming out of high school. He's a top 150 recruit, but he gave Nebraska a little energy on the defensive end. Yep. I think he was happy with what he saw there. Ramel Lloyd, he announced that he is going to redshirt after a discussion with Ramel and his parents. I don't know what happened there, but apparently he's the 3rd or 4th point guard. They're happy with Emmanuel Bandamel and with Sam Griesel, who had a nice game, 18 points, 7 rebounds. That's kind of what you're probably just going to write down every night for Sam Griesel.
Well, and the funny thing is he may go 18 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. He may crack a triple-double once this year, maybe twice. But Sam Griesel, to me, his game, I highly doubt you're going to see a lot of games where you go, oh, man, Griesel was awesome. Almost every game, you're going to go, I didn't realize he scored 24 and
Right.
had 12 rebounds because he does it so efficiently. And so and quietly, and it's just he's a fun player to watch, and that size is going to present problems in the Big Ten. It just is, and I'm like I said, I'm stoked, man. I think this year is going to be fun. What does Husker men's hoops do?
Don't
know, but I'm cautiously optimistic that they're going to win more than the 10 games they did last year. And I don't know. I think the NIT is a possibility. I think they can get to 500, and who knows what happens after that.
How many games have we seen with Nebraska the last 5 to 8 minutes, somewhere in there, that they're down 5 and it doesn't go well to end the game? I feel better about this team cohesively. Like, I think that they'll stay together better than other Hoiberg teams have. I think with their defense, they're going to get a lot of stops when they need them in the closing minutes. Can they knock down baskets? Can they make enough shots to win games? That's the big question mark about this team.
Well, and the thing was, last year, I specifically thought numerous times you had 3 guys on the floor that were not named Alonzo Verge and Bryce McGowan's that stood around because they knew there was not going to be a play that had been called that was going to actually be run.
Sure.
Unless it was simply one of the 2 of them keeping the ball, passing it to the other one, and then one of the 2 shooting.
Okay.
And when you don't have a team out in those crunch times, then you wind up with 10 wins on the season.
Yeah. I think they've got, 7, 8 guys. It'll be interesting to see how the lineup shakes out and the depth situation. Is it really a different guy every night? Because Casey, who played so well against Maine, didn't show up. Jawan Gary, who played so well early on, didn't show up much, but it didn't matter. Nebraska got other guys
because he got injured.
That's
so.
right. Jawan Gary sat in that game, but it feels like Nebraska has a little more depth than I thought, and they'll have way more depth when Derek Walker gets back.
And I want to jump over to the women's team here as well before we wrap up the conversation on basketball, because Amy Williams has got a group that just is super interesting. They may get Sam Habe back after the Christmas break and New Year's break, but they have, I believe it is 8 players that are averaging 18 and a half minutes a game or more. And I get it. They were blowout wins, but they have a rotation that is 8 or 9 deep. They're led by Allison Widener right now, 19 and a half points a game, 8 rebounds a game. Izzy Bourne, 13 and a half and 7. Alexis Markowski, only 10 and a half and 7. And she's a Big Ten Player of the Year candidate. And Jess Shelley hasn't really got going yet. And Amy Williams has got herself a team.
Maddie Kroll, the South Dakota transfer, could really help this team. She knocked down 4 threes a couple of games ago. That's nice coming off the bench. You don't even have Maggie Mendelson yet.
No,
she's not even here yet. So when she arrives from volleyball, she'll give you some size because she's a top 100 recruit and she's 6'5". So I think this team will just get better and better. And you mentioned Sam Hybe. She'll be back sometime around the start of the Big Ten season, probably.
Yeah, and the another player that I wanted to mention who's been fighting injuries her whole career at Nebraska, Trinity Brady. She was a highly touted recruit that came in, and she's finally healthy. And I think she started one of the 2 games as well. Yeah. But she's another one that's averaging, 18 and a half minutes a game. And she's going to give you minutes and even more depth. So,
yeah, I mean, Allison Widener is a really good player. Obviously, we know Jazz Shelley. They've got really good players. It didn't end well for them last year, and I think that left a really bad taste in their mouth after playing so well in the Big Ten tournament. So this team, I think, is playing for something, and we'll definitely talk a lot about women's basketball, Husker women's basketball and volleyball. Is it over?
It's over.
It's over. They were swept today. I mean, Ohio State is just that good.
Yeah.
And Nebraska didn't play well. We will talk volleyball with Tanya Taki within the next 20, 25 minutes or so and get her takes on the games. We thought Nebraska, if they're able to win that third set, maybe this could go a while. They were not. They had the lead a few different times, but Ohio State was just really good today. They're a really good volleyball team. As we mentioned, they hadn't lost since they lost to Nebraska the last time.
They are number 6 in the country.
They're 6th in the country. This is going to be a good experience for Nebraska. They just got to get better. And John Cook will get them there because he always does. Let's get to break and do our Big Ten Blitz. Talk about every Big Ten game and rank the teams It is Husker Rewind. He's Mike Melby. I'm Tom Stevens. Back with more after this.
This is Dan Friedman. Between 2010 and 2019, distracted driving caused more than 40,000 car crashes in Nebraska, resulting in over 14,000 severe injuries and deaths. Please keep your eyes on the road. If you have a smartphone, put it away while you're behind the wheel. It will help keep our community safe and secure. This message is brought to you by Friedman Law Offices, helping injured people. It's what we do. It's all we do. Find us at friedmanlaw.com today.
Courage. I learned it from my adoptive mom. Hold my hand.
You hold my hand. Learn about adopting a teen from foster care at adoptuskids.org. You can't imagine the reward. Brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Start your Sundays off right with Jeff and Nicole Essink on Fitness Fanatics. Jeff and Nicole discuss health and wellness, how to achieve fitness goals, and more through the life of gym owners and gym goers. It's Fitness Fanatics from 9 to 11 a.m. on Sundays on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
This is the Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back, Husker Rewind. Tom Stevens here, Mike Melby over there. Do it every Sunday from 5 until 7, unless Bronco football tells us otherwise. By the way, my buddy's team, also known as the Broncos, the Bronx, the Sheridan Bronx, have won their 11th championship in the last 15 years. So my buddy Greg, my cousin Greg, actually, and my buddy, coaches there. And so he wanted me to shout out to the Sheridan Bronx.
Nice.
Another championship. Town of 17,000. They win it almost every year in Wyoming.
I was going to ask you what
Wyoming.
state it was. In Wyoming.
He lives in Wyoming. He went to the Michigan game as a Nebraska fan. He's never lived in Nebraska. He's the biggest Husker fan I know. He's coming for the Wisconsin weekend, for this weekend for Wisconsin. But he went to the big house. No, Nebraska would probably get killed. And that's kind of what happened. Nebraska was certainly dominated, if not killed. I thought they played pretty well at times, but not able to overcome a great Michigan team. But congratulations to the Sheridan Bronx. Let's get to the Blitz.
The Big Ten Blitz. The Big Ten Blitz. The Big Ten Blitz. The Big Ten Blitz.
All right, we go through every Big Ten team and rank the teams. Start with Ohio State versus Indiana. No problem for the second-ranked Buckeyes, 56-14. C.J. Stroud in the Heisman conversation, 17 of 28, 297, 5 TDs. He's definitely on that list for the Heisman. Mayan Williams had a nice day, 15 carries, 147, and a TD. Ohio State runs for 340. Total yards, 662. Ohio State, are they the best team in the Big Ten? We'll find out in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we will.
I cannot wait for that game.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that game. I am this year. I'm so looking forward to that.
Yep.
Aiden O'Connell's Jekyll and Hyde act saw Dr. Jekyll show up on Saturday as he goes 25 for 40, 237 yards, 3 touchdowns, and Purdue's 31-24 win over Illinois in Champaign. Freshman running back Devin Mockabee ran for 106 yards and a score as well. Purdue's D held Chase Brown under 100 yards. First time this season, Chase Brown was held under 100, and the injury at the end of the game did not look good.
Did not look good at all.
You said you think he may be out.
It looked, I don't know, and I haven't seen an update, but it looked like he might be out for a while, if maybe the rest of the season. I have not seen an update as of yet. Aiden O'Connell, you mentioned he played really well. They win that toy cannon trophy thing. The Big Ten has way too many trophy games for my liking. A lot of trash talk in that game, and especially on the Illinois side. And I think it affected them in a poor way. Brett Bielema might be falling from a lot of people's wish list as far as coaches are concerned.
Yeah, Illinois whistled for 12 penalties, 121 yards, and they've lost 2 in a row. Now at home, 4-way tie for the Big Ten West. Purdue, Illinois, Iowa, and Minnesota all sit at 4-3. Next week, Purdue hosts Northwestern, and Illinois plays at Michigan.
So they'll get better. At least Purdue will. Michigan or Illinois will not. They will lose to Michigan. Michigan State over Rutgers, 27-21. Michigan State needs to win one of the final 2 games to get to a bowl game. They've got Indiana next week. They're not going to beat Penn State, so they better beat Indiana to get to a bowl game. No problem with Rutgers. No, it was a close game, 27-21. Michigan ran for 197. Gavin Wimsatt played pretty well. The 6'3" sophomore for Rutgers. He was 34, 236, couple of TDs, but it wasn't enough as Rutgers falls to 4-6. They need to win their last two, which they will not, to get to a bowl game.
In soggy conditions in Happy Valley, Penn State shut out Maryland 30-0. The Nittany Lions sacked Taulia Tagovailoa 7 times. Nick Singleton ran for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. Maryland's offense was held to 134 total yards, and in the game, Sean Clifford became the Nittany Lions' all-time passing yardage leader, surpassing Trace McSorley. Clifford now has 10,023 yards. Penn State travels to take on Rutgers next Saturday. So in the last 37 years of Penn State football, they've only had 2 quarterbacks, Sean Clifford and Trace McSorley, because I'm sure this is Clifford's 17th year, and it felt like McSorley was there for 20.
There's a lot of quarterbacks like that in the Big Ten that are, in their 40s, collecting Social Security and have been there forever. And it happens this way with Maryland. I know they're bowl eligible, but every year they just melt toward the end of the season. They lose 30-0. They're going to a bowl. Congratulations. But this does not look like a good football team right now. As you mentioned, I think Taulia Tagovailoa is a good quarterback, but sacked 7 times. Penn State definitely had their way in that game. Iowa over Wisconsin. Iowa improves to 6-4. Wisconsin now 5-5. They need to either beat Nebraska or Minnesota to get to a bowl game. They lose it 24-10, despite winning the yardage battle. Iowa only had a total of 142 yards total offense. They averaged 2.1 yards per play, and they win the game anyway. Cooper DeJean had a 41-yard interception return. Iowa tied for the Big Ten lead. It makes no sense. They're ranked 129th in offense in the country. They held Wisconsin to 227 yards, and they had a bunch of takeaways. That's what Iowa does. There is no sense. It makes no sense they won, but that's what Iowa does.
Well, yeah, I mean, name me another team that can have their quarterback throw for 94 yards and have a QBR of 27, and they win by 2 touchdowns. Interesting, after the game, Wisconsin interim head coach Jim Leonhard was asked about the rumors about tampering. And this is his quote: "I would never accuse teams of tampering, but teams are tampering with our players. It's unfortunate to see where it's at right now, but I have got to continue to show a clear vision." He's literally, he just didn't say the name of the teams that are trying to get Braylon Allen,
Kirk Ferentz,
to go to their school next year, and telling them all kinds of bad things about Jim Leonhard and what Wisconsin is going to be next year.
I'm never going to say that another team is tampering, but Kirk Ferentz, they're tampering. I don't know. I think that happens probably more than ever with name, image, and likeness.
Yep.
Scott Frost said that was his big concern with name, image, and likeness. And let's face it, it's going to be happening. We all thought the same thing last year when Minnesota beats Nebraska, and PJ Fleck is whispering in the ear of Adrian Martinez, "Hey, come on over to Minnesota. We'd love to have you."
Yep.
It didn't happen for Minnesota because Tanner Morgan is in his 17th year as quarterback there
as well.
But speaking of that, that's our final game, I believe.
It is. Speaking of Minnesota, they use their tried and true game plan. They roll past hapless Northwestern 31-3 behind Mo Ibrahim's 178 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Gophers held the ball for over 40 minutes, just like they always do, and the team totaled 302 rushing yards. And fresh off of leading Minnesota to a come-from-behind win against Nebraska last weekend, Ethan Kaliak-Manis started in place of Tanner Morgan, who is still out with the injury suffered after Ty Robinson tried to plant him in the turf at Memorial Stadium. The only reason I threw that last bit in was because I wanted to say Kaliak-Manis one more time.
Well, it's an interesting conversation to me because Ethan Kaliak-Manis, his stats are terrible. 7 of 13, 64 yards. They win 31-3. Wisconsin, you mentioned Iowa's quarterback hasn't done anything all year long and didn't do anything in that game, and they win 24-10. Penn State, Sean Clifford didn't have a great game. No. They went 30-0 over Maryland. Peyton Thorne had a good game. Aiden O'Connell had a nice game. Certainly C.J. Stroud did. So maybe this isn't a good example like a lot of weeks, but you see this week after week where it's Tanner Morgan or Kaliak Mattis or Graham Mertz, and you look at their stats and you think, how did they win that game?
Yeah.
When was the last time Nebraska had a game like that where their quarterback went 7 of 13, 64 yards, and they won 31-3?
That would be never.
I want more games like that because that's the Big Ten West to me. That's what the Big Ten West does to you, where we don't always have to complain about or praise our quarterback play. It could be, hey, the defense played great today, didn't even need the quarterback. They win 31-3.
You know what? I think I'm probably 100% wrong on that never happening at Nebraska. I think if you go back to the 90s team, Mickey Joseph may have been a quarterback that went like 7 of 13 for 56 yards.
Absolutely.
Oh, by the way, he ran for 147 and 2 touchdowns, and Nebraska ran for 527 yards, and they won probably 51-3. But in the day and age we live in today, for a quarterback to have those kind of numbers and a team to dominate the way they did, it's just truly spectacular and amazing.
All right, let's rank the teams at 14. I think we both have Northwestern. They're 1-9. Their only win is against Nebraska. 31-3 loss to Minnesota, and Minnesota will be at Purdue next week, or today. Northwestern will be at Purdue next week.
Yeah, and I've got Northwestern in there at 14 as well.
Number 13, Indiana. They're 3-7. I think Tom Allen will probably be dismissed at the end of this year. They lose to Ohio State, the second-ranked team of the country. Everybody knew they were going to lose that game, but they lose at 56-14. And next week, it's probably not going to get any easier. Michigan State needs to beat Indiana to get to a bowl game, and that's who Indiana plays next week.
Yeah, and that's where I have got Indiana pegged as well. That is an interesting game because the way the season has gone in the Big Ten, that's one of those stupid upsets that happens. Although I don't think, and I said this 4 weeks ago now, I did not think that Northwestern, Nebraska, or Indiana was going to win another game this season. And I still stand by that. But that Indiana-Michigan State game next week really has my interest piqued because then Michigan State, to me, upsets Penn State to get bowl eligible.
It probably does happen
because
like
it's
that.
been so weird in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, because it makes no sense, so it'll probably happen. Number 12, Rutgers. I think we could all name our bottom 3 or possibly our bottom 4 teams in the Big Ten. Rutgers is 4-6. They lose to Michigan State 27-21. They did run for a bunch of yards, and it was a fairly close game, but they lost it. They've lost quite a few close games. That's kind of what they do. They host Penn State next week, so it's not going to get any easier for Rutgers.
No, and I've got them at 12 as well, and 11. I'm sure you and I are both in agreement. It's going to be Nebraska.
Yeah, Nebraska 3-7. They lose to Michigan, even though I thought they played really, really hard. They were never going to win that game without Casey at the quarterback position, but they do get a push. If you're a gambler and you bet on Nebraska, you didn't lose any money. You didn't win any money. 34-3. Nebraska, of course, hosts Wisconsin this week.
Who do you have at 10, Tom?
I have Maryland.
Ah, interesting. So we finally differ a little bit.
I don't buy Maryland. They do this every single year where they go into a funk at the end of the year. They're going to be in a bowl game, but I'm not convinced. They've now lost 2 in a row. They're going to lose 3 in a row after they host Ohio State next week. They did not look good at all. They were sacked 7 times in a 30-0 loss to Penn State.
I've got Wisconsin at number 10. So it's the battle for the top 10 spot.
Wisconsin. The only reason I put Wisconsin ahead of Maryland is they beat Maryland a couple weeks ago.
And the only reason I put Wisconsin down there is just because it was more of a sexy matchup having 10 versus 11.
A lot of these teams, you could throw them into a hopper, and any name that you pull out, I would be okay with. They're all the same.
I had a 6-way tie for 5th last week because I was so tired of trying to figure out who was better, who was worse.
Right. I have Wisconsin because they beat Maryland. Then they come back and lose to Iowa after outgaining Iowa. But they lose to Iowa 24-10. I have Wisconsin at number 9. They, of course, come to Lincoln next weekend.
Yeah, and I've got Maryland at 9. Who do you got at 8?
I've got Michigan State 5-5. They beat Illinois and Rutgers back-to-back weekends. They're going to host Indiana to become bowl eligible this week.
I've got them at 8 as well. 7.
Iowa 6-4. They beat Wisconsin 24-10, despite only having 142 total yards in that game. They're ridiculously bad offensively. If Brian Ferentz doesn't get fired as offensive coordinator, the only reason is that his dad is the head coach, and that's probably the reason he won't get fired. But it'll be interesting this week. Iowa is at Minnesota.
Yeah, that one, well, first of all, it's going to put you to sleep.
Yeah.
Because it is going to be a colossally boring game.
Yep.
And you got two teams that love to hold onto the ball, and we'll see what time of possession plays out. I will say that whoever has the lower amount of time of possession in Iowa, Minnesota next week in Minneapolis wins the game.
I don't know. I mean, flip a coin. It feels like Iowa, I'm just taking Minnesota because they're on, they're at home. And they're playing for another stupid trophy that none of us care about. Number 6, Minnesota is where I have the Gophers. At one time, we thought they'd win the West. They might still, because any one of 4 teams could win the West. But Minnesota is where I have them after their 31-3 victory over Northwestern. They do host Iowa this week.
Same here with me in Minnesota. And I am looking forward. I'm going to watch like the last 7 minutes of the game because that's about all I can stomach of really, really boring football.
Yeah.
Who do you got at number 5?
I've got Illinois 7-3. They lose to Purdue 31-24. They are at Michigan, but Illinois, after looking like they had the West wrapped up, have now lost 2 in a row, and they're going to lose 3 in a row after they face Michigan.
Completely agree. I've got them at 5 as well. 4 for you?
I've got Purdue. At one time, we thought Purdue was the best team in the West. They may, in fact, be after losing 2 in a row, but they get the 31-24 win over Illinois, and they're going to win again because they host Northwestern.
They will finish the Big Ten season 6-3 because they have Northwestern and Indiana for their final 2 games. And I've got Purdue in at number 4 as well. But I think whoever, I don't know the tiebreaker with whoever else can wind up 6-3 as well. But Purdue will wind up, I believe, 6-3 in the Big Ten West.
And then the last 3, I think we're all the same, or at least we're similar. I do have Penn State. I've had Penn State at 3 for a long time. They're 8-2. They might be playing the best football in the Big Ten right now. A 30-0 win over Maryland. And they're going to beat Rutgers. I think they've won 7 of the last 9 games against Rutgers. That's not going to be a problem for Penn State this week.
No, I've got them at 3 as well. And then I think you and I think switch 1 and 2.
That's right. I'm gonna keep with Michigan at number 1 and Ohio State at number 2. Ohio State looked really good. They looked like the better team than Michigan this week. But how do you know until they face each other? Really. 56-14 over Indiana. They have Maryland. They're at Maryland this week. And then Michigan, of course, clocked Nebraska. And they've got Illinois. They're hosting Illinois this week.
And I've just got them flipped. I've got Ohio State 1, Michigan 2. Looking ahead to the Ohio State-Michigan game, I'm getting a hold of Wingstop and Mary Ellen's Food for the Soul. And I am going to full-blown smorgasbord it at my house.
Nice.
And I am going to enjoy watching that game for the first time.
Can I come
ever.
over? I'll bring something.
Yes, absolutely.
I can't wait for that one, just mostly for the food.
Exactly.
More than anything else. Let's talk a little volleyball. Nebraska is swept by Ohio State today. I was hoping they would still be playing when we talked to one of the best middle blockers in Nebraska volleyball history, Tanya Taki, but Nebraska, they're just replaying the game over after Nebraska lost very quickly to Ohio State. I think they thought this thing would go 5 sets, so they just looped it, and they're playing the actual game over, but it's over. Ohio State has beaten number 4 Nebraska, and they really didn't have a problem with the Huskers today, sweeping them, but we will talk some Husker volleyball. What went wrong today for Husker volleyball? We'll talk to Tanya Taki coming up next. He's Mike Melby. I'm Tom Stevens. It's Husker Rewind.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you prevent wildfires.
Dude, I've got this. I've been camping since I was 5 years old.
But I am a camping influencer.
You know what? I'll bet you $5. Assistant Smokey, what is the best way to put out a campfire?
To put out a campfire, drown with water, stir, drown again. Then make sure the fire is out cold by feeling with the back of your hand.
Wait, really?
I'll take the $5.
Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Turning my pain into purpose is pretty much what I have done to start this foundation.
In August 2020, after the death of George Floyd, Bridget Floyd and other family members established the George Floyd Memorial Foundation in support of the Black community.
It's going to take more than just us as a foundation. It's going to take the community, the world, to make a change.
Fight for racial justice for the Black community. Learn how at lovehasnolabels.com. Brought to you by Love Has No Labels and the Ad Council.
More of the Sunday Rewind is coming your way next.
At Allo, we think you deserve the fiber things in life, like binging your favorite TV shows and movies buffer-free, next level, lag-free gaming, and video calls without frozen faces. So say goodbye to lag and buffering and hello to super fast fiber internet with dedicated 24/7 support for total peace of mind. Plus, no hidden fees, no expiration dates, and no contracts, ever. From dependable service to exceptional support, experience the fiber things with Allo. Go to allofiber.com/fiberthings and switch today.
The captain, Vershawn Jackson.
There's no reason to change something that's working. So if your first 16 scripted plays work, guess what I'm running? Another 16.
Yeah, same ones.
What's wrong with that? So if your plays are working and they're doing a good job, throw out the rest of your playbook and be a coach. You know what? A coach can draw it up in the sand. What would you do if you took the playbooks?
Weekdays from 11 to 2 on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Veterans, do you know what local, state, and federal benefits and services you're eligible to receive? Do you want help navigating the application or appeals process? Speak to your county veteran service officer or the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs State Service Office to see what's available to you and your family. You've served our country, now let us serve you. Visit veterans.nebraska.gov today. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This is the Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the Husker Rewind. I'm Mike Melby. That's Tom Stevens. Another Sunday afternoon, hanging out in the studio.
I like it.
And on the Honda of Lincoln hotline, we have former Nebraska middle blocker Tanya Taki. And Tanya, Nebraska with a surprising match today. Ohio State on a 13-match winning streak after sweeping the Huskers. Kind of curious what your thoughts were on today's match.
You know, you said surprising. I don't know that I was surprised. I think Ohio State has been playing amazing. We were super lucky to beat them at home, and they played their hearts out. Their crowd was into it. I mean, the fans had the "It's Corn." That was amazing for them. Like they hats off to them. Holy cow!
Well, it was surprising to me because I think we're going to win every
Okay.
match, and I think we're going to sweep everybody. So
Okay. I knew that if we were going to be a Final Four level team, that we would be able to go into Ohio State at Ohio State for the win. And I feel like we are just a skosh away. I feel like we're a top 10 team for sure. I just think that to break into the Final Four right now, I've been kind of beating this dead horse, but I feel like better away from being a Final Four team.
Is that it? Because the defense does sometimes show up and not always perfect. Sometimes the serving has a few issues. Is it just the setting for you?
We played some amazing defense. I mean, our serve and pass game, could have been a little better. We were trying for some really aggressive serves because they're talking about that setter being the best setter in the Big Ten. And so when we're going up against the best setter in the Big Ten, and then we have just watch that on that side of the net, and then what our hitters are able to hit. And, not to say that if we had Nicklin running a 5-1 and she was, 5 inches high or getting 5 inches higher above the net, whether she was taller or just had a bigger vertical, I think that would make a big difference. We have probably the best defense in the country. We have some of the best blockers. I just feel like we're not getting our hitters in their prime spot at 90% clip. I feel like we're at a 60% clip because we have Nicklin in only 4 rotations. And not to say that she even sets perfect. So I think the other team was put into position 90% of the time, and we were at 60% of the time, if that makes sense.
It does. And Nicklin set Becca Alec on set point in the first set, and the ball, I don't believe, got above the net. And Becca hits it into the net. I mean, that's a fifth-year player. That can't happen. And then there was another one that I was able to catch, I think, right before we came on the air, where Ani Evans was in and was going to set Caitlin Horde. But unfortunately, Caitlin Horde does not have a 62-inch vertical. So she couldn't get to the ball, and it just landed right in front of, I believe, Allie Batenhorst, who was on the other side. Is there a way to fix the setting issue this season?
I mean, we have a number one setter coming in next year, and so I think we're gonna. I wouldn't be surprised if Nebraska couldn't make a very deep, very competitive run to the Final Four. It's in Omaha. We're gonna be on fire. We're gonna go hard. It's just, can we beat Texas to go to the Final Four? Can we beat Wisconsin to go to the Final Four? Can we go beat Ohio State? Are we gonna beat that last team? And to have what we have right now and to get that close, like, we're all frustrated, but we also have to have a lot of pride in our program that we are all like, man, we should have had that, and all those types of things. Like, that's the level of the program that we have right now. Like, if we don't make it to the Final Four, if we don't make it to the championship game, we are disappointed. And I think that's an amazing atmosphere for us to be, operating in.
Talking with Tanya Taki, one of the great middle blockers in Nebraska volleyball history, head coach of Nebraska 1. Would you consider going back to the 5-1 and just leaving Nickel Hames out there all the time?
Well, we did that for some rallies in this I want to say the second set. They kept Nickel in, and I didn't know if it was because, or maybe it was the first set, that they knew that they were going to run out of subs, so they just kept the 5-1 going. I think the other thing about the 5-1 is that it would put a little bit more pressure on our pin hitters because one of them isn't playing. If that's Krause's not playing, or Batenhorst isn't playing, or if you're having an off night, somebody's coming in for you. But when we're playing a 6-2 and all those pin hitters are always in, that changes things a little bit for that competition and that raising your level of play. And just having that, amazing sub to come in off the bench and light a spark. And so I think a 5-1 is something that we can do, but man, with the way these super teams and these super seniors are able to put down balls on the outside, I just don't think we can have Nicklin out there on the pin. Like, you are blocking lawn dot with Nicklin Hames. Like, it's a scary thought.
That it is. Now, you'd mentioned that we signed the number one ranked setter in the country, Bergen Riley. What do you know of Bergen Riley, and is she someone that's going to be able to come in next year and start and be effective?
I mean, I don't know anything about this girl. I've only heard her name and seen, her picture on social media. So I have never seen her play. I just like the idea of having, Northwestern right now is running with a freshman setter, and she's doing great. And I think that the Nebraska program and Kelly Hunter can take a freshman and be like, hey, this is what we're doing. And then we also are going to, I believe, having Nicklin Hames being the volunteer assistant next year. So I think that's just, another person that's going to back up a freshman setter. So if she's got the hands and the attitude, like, let's go. I'm excited.
Okay, one of the other players they signed is the number one libero in the country, Lainey Choboy. My question for you is, what does John Cook do with her next season? Because Lexi Rodriguez isn't going anywhere for 2 more years. Is it going to be something where Lainey Choboy or possibly Lexi becomes Kenzie Knuckles and a defensive specialist?
I mean, that's definitely out there. I mean, you're going to have somebody be kind of waiting in the wings of being the libero. Kenzie Knuckles, I think, would have a COVID year if she wanted it. But she posted something on TikTok yesterday, and I don't have a TikTok, but my kids do, and they were like, "Look, Lexi Rodriguez and Knuckles are on TikTok, and it says that Knuckles isn't coming back next year because it says, what are you going to do without me next year?" I was like, okay, well, there's where the other libero is going to go, I guess. But I thought watching the Ohio State game, the first 2 sets, Knuckles was like on point. Just the cover balls she was playing, the serve receive, and her defense running down balls was amazing.
Yeah. I wonder, because I think back to some of the teams that have won recently, Wisconsin last year with Dana Recchi, and they were really an older team. And part of that was COVID. But one of the better players now for Nebraska this year is Caitlin Horde, an older player, transfer from Penn State. Would you, if you were John Cook, save at least one scholarship every year for name, image, and likeness for somebody who's maybe 22, 23, who's been around the block?
Well, the what's happening right now, what's going to change is that people aren't going to get their COVID year. And so what happened with Caitlin Horn, as an example, is that she is a 4-year scholarship recipient at Penn State. But because of COVID, she gets to transfer somewhere else, and somewhere else can give her a scholarship, but Penn State is not allowed to give her a scholarship.
Right.
Like, that ends next year.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to change recruiting quite a bit, but the transfer portal has definitely made a big difference in recruiting, where you have, players going to smaller or lower level schools being standouts and being like, hey, I'm out. I showed what I can do. I'm ready to be big time. The Big Ten can only recruit so many players, so many freshmen every year, but then to go somewhere else and then pick up a transfer. I mean, how many times have you watched a game on TV and they're saying that there's 5 freshmen and 6 transfers on this team? Like, that's happening.
Yep.
So,
there you go.
So the Huskers this next week, the road definitely does not get any easier. I'm trying to pull up the schedule real quick. I know Purdue is
we
on the
play
list.
Purdue.
Yep.
And
Purdue
then
and
we
Wisconsin.
play Wisconsin, Minnesota. So yeah, I mean, there is a very good chance we could lose another or 2 down this stretch. And it's just going to be how we rebound and how we, bring it back together and go. I mean, it's obvious we can be successful. The problem is that we're not stringing it together in 6, 7, 8 points like Ohio State was. Like, they could run points, and we were not. We would make it. I mean, how many balls landed in the middle of the donut? How many missed serves did we have? How many, just hitting errors trying to go for high hands we completely missed? Like, we go 4 points and make an error, and Ohio State's going 10 points before they make an error.
Yeah.
If that makes any
Absolutely.
sense? So
Totally
if
does.
we can clean up our errors, we are playing at a very high level. It's just we are erring at a higher level right now than a Final Four at this date.
Yeah.
We have 3 more weeks to be a Final Four team.
And how much of that in your mind is it just a sign of being a younger team? In many
Right.
ways?
I mean, we definitely have younger players, but we also are led by, super seniors. We have Caitlin Hor's a super senior. We have Nicklin Hames being a super senior. Like, we have those players. I just think Ohio State has like 4 of those players right now.
That makes sense. One of the great middle blockers in Nebraska volleyball history. Always fun to talk to you. Head of Nebraska 1. What's going on at Nebraska 1 these days?
We just had our high school tryouts and our high school meetings, and so we are gearing up for a great club season coming up. But our classes and lessons are always open for anyone, even if you're not a part of our program.
Friday, they've got Iowa. That should be a win. And then Sunday, we'll be talking to you after, hopefully, a Purdue win at the Devaney Center. Good talking to you, Tanya. We'll see you next week. There you go. Tanya Taki, one of the great middle blockers in Nebraska volleyball history. Yeah, she's right. They're not completely young. It feels like they're young. They're young in certain spots. And I think that it's the setter thing. It sticks out like a sore thumb. You'd like to be really experienced there and be really talented there. And it did not work out with Kennedy Orr, or at least it hasn't so far worked out with Kennedy Orr, who was the number 1 setter in the entire country coming out of high school. And then I think some injuries there, and just not at this point able to put it all together. And so Nicklin Hames is back in the lineup. And I don't know if you would have asked John Cook that before the season, that he would have thought that where they would be.
I don't think that was going to be the plan. And bottom line, Nicklin did not have a great match today.
But she has played at a really high level.
Yeah, and she, that's the whole thing. Is, I mean, everybody's going to have a match where you're average or you have a couple of bad plays.
Yeah.
But as Tanya said, Ohio State is just clicking. And you and I, before we went on the air, were watching some of these rallies, and they're just incredible.
Yeah.
It was stunning. You would have rallies that were going over a minute and just unbelievable saves and girls diving, getting the pancake out to make sure a ball doesn't hit. And the way Lexi Rodriguez and other liberos are able to dig a ball and get a perfect pass to a setter astound me as often as they do it.
Yep. They just fell a little short today. Friday night was fun. Nebraska 300th consecutive sellout at the Devaney Center, over 8,200 there. Some nice art pieces written there. If you're not familiar with the history, it would happen about 2000. They've already been at the Devaney Center that long. Tom Osborne, was it? When would happen? 2001?
No, it's 2000. Oh, I want to say 14 is when they moved to Devaney.
That's right. But that's right. They were at the Coliseum much longer than that. But I'm trying to think of when they made the move. And John Cook didn't want to make that move.
Yeah. No, it was 2014 or 2015.
Okay. It has been much more recently than I was thinking. But it was a big risk because the Coliseum was a great home court advantage. It was people right on top of you, 3,000 people. And then you go to the Devaney Center where you're wondering if you can sell it out all the time. But Tom Osborne had that goal to remodel the Devaney Center, and they did, and made it into a great building. But I think there was some hesitancy on the part of John Cook to do that. And now you're at 300 consecutive sellouts.
Yeah, that's insane.
That is
it's Nebraska athletics has the 2 longest sellout streaks in NCAA history.
And volleyball will surpass football because they play many more home games than does football. But it's just incredible when you think about where the sport of women's volleyball has come and where Nebraska has helped bring it. I mean, selling out Final Fours, mostly because of Nebraska fans. And Nebraska, I think when you think about the history of volleyball nationally, Nebraska has a big imprint on it.
Oh, they do. And the funny thing is it has such a direct impact on the high schools. There are so many Division I volleyball recruits that come out of the state of Nebraska.
Per capita, it has to be the best volleyball state in the country.
And it's all because of what Terry Pettit and John Cook have done over the course of the last, what do you want to say, 40 years?
Right. It's been fun. And if they could somehow get it together, even without a marquee setter, and get to another Final Four, watch out, because this team is still going to get better.
Well, and that's the thing. They didn't get swept today, by the way. I was trying to kind of pay attention TV behind me.
They didn't get swept?
They did not get swept. They lost it 4 sets.
Okay.
I wasn't checking on my phone, but they lose in 4 sets today. They won the third, but it was one where after the match, I'm thinking what you were. I think this is a good thing. This is something where they made some errors. They know what they need to work on to be able to beat a top 5 caliber, a Final Four caliber team. I'm not worried because we're not in December. That's the thing. I mean, John Cook's team simply, now granted, it's season's running out. We're down to 3 weeks, but his team simply, they're not going to play their best volleyball in September, October, and probably not in early November, but they are on the verge of playing their best volleyball. And I can't wait for it. And a Final Four in Omaha with this team, and look out.
Yeah, I think the ceiling. I mean, Ohio State's really, really good. And they might be playing the best volleyball of anybody in the league right now, including Wisconsin. So I'm not that upset about losing to Ohio State. You're 1-1 on the year with Ohio State. Yeah, they had a bunch of service errors the first time Nebraska beat them in Lincoln. And they played much better than they did when Nebraska beat them in Lincoln. But Nebraska can also play better, can play way better than they did today. Let's get to break and do the coaching stock market carousel. We do it every week. Who's up, who's down, guys on our list. It's going to be 2 more weeks before we hear the name announced for the University of Nebraska, the next coach. Nobody knows, and we don't either. But we're going to take our best guess. It's mostly just a guessing thing that we do for about 10 minutes, but it's kind of fun. The stock market coaching carousel is coming up. He's Mike Melby. I'm Tom Stevens. It's the Husker Rewind. More on the way next.
At Allo, we think you deserve the fiber things in life, like binging your favorite TV shows and movies buffer-free, next level, lag-free gaming, and video calls without frozen faces. So say goodbye to lag and buffering and hello to super fast fiber internet with dedicated 24/7 support for total peace of mind. Plus, no hidden fees, no expiration dates, and no contracts, ever. From dependable service to exceptional support, experience the fiber things with Allo. Go to allofiber.com/fiberthings and switch today.
Into the building for the first time after the shooting. It was crippling, but it had to be preserved.
In response to the Pulse nightclub shooting that affected the LGBTQ community, Barbara Poma, owner of Pulse, founded the One Pulse Foundation to honor Pulse victims and survivors.
If you're an ally of this community, speak out. There are more of us together than apart. It is the power of love in its rawest form.
Join the fight for LGBTQ acceptance. Learn how at lovehasnolabels.com. Brought to you by Love Has No Labels and the Ad Council.
For all of your concrete needs, call Kramer Concrete at 402-560-0670. Do you have a cracked driveway or sidewalk? Are you in need of an egress window or an awesome-looking new patio with stamped concrete? If so, call Tim Kramer at 402-560-0670 to get a free estimate. With over 20 years of experience, the Kramer Concrete staff specializes in concrete replacement, egress windows, and concrete patio design. Kramer Concrete is the low-cost solution to all of your concrete problems. Call Tim today at 402-560-0670.
Back to the Sunday Rewind with Tom and Mike.
That's old school.
Yeah?
No school like the old school.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the Husker Rewind. I'm Mike Melby. That is the unofficial mayor of Lincoln, Tom Stevens.
Mayor.
Yeah, that's what DP said. He said, you're the unofficial mayor of Lincoln.
That's Fred Hoiberg.
I believe him.
There can only be one mayor, Fred Hoiberg.
True. I want to give a quick shout out to a friend of ours. His name's Tim Bailey. And Tim is one of the coolest guys and has one of the most unbelievable voices you'll ever hear. And you can actually hear his voice as he introduces our episodes of Nebraska Gems now. Tom and I started a podcast a while ago called Nebraska Gems. Go to nebraskagems.com. At about 3:45 this afternoon, episode 14 dropped with probably one of the biggest legends in the history of radio in Lincoln, Nebraska, Mr. Joe Scar. You and Joe had a conversation, and I genuinely laughed out loud. And when we actually put a bit in from Joe and Timo, when he's talking to his dad, and when they tell the story about chasing grandma's wig, I spit water out, and it's truly funny. Great interview, Tom. But that one's pretty special.
Well, thank you. It was an interesting era, that era of radio in Lincoln, because you had a bunch of big names. You had Joe and Timo, and Gabe Baptiste was kind of their mentor and my mentor and your mentor at that time, the program director. But you also had Scott and Kathy at that time. And then later on, Tim and the Animal, Todd and Tyler were making waves in this market. Country music was huge. Nebraska was going through 60-3. So there was a lot of competition for ears at that time. And Joe and Timo made it to the top of the radio market doing classic rock at both KFMQ and then the Eagle later on. It's just a great conversation about where radio is going and where he came from. He went from this 30-something, and he was perceived as a shock jock, and he hated that because he didn't see himself, and nor did Timo see themselves as that. In his 30s, number one in the market, then getting fired from that job and having to look for a new gig, and then rose to the top again with Jenna and Joe at B107. So it's a great story that Joe tells, and he's been a good friend of both of ours for a long time. And we want to tell more of those stories with Nebraska Gems. So go to nebraskagems.com, or you can go to Twitter and check it out as well. I mean, just anywhere where you find your podcast, you can find it.
Yep.
So
we'll do all the media blitz with Twitter and Facebook here later on tonight.
It's probably too late to do it because the new coach is going to be announced probably right after the Iowa game. We probably need a sounder for the coaching carousel, the stock market, but a little too late for that. This is always kind of fun to see where Nebraska might be looking. And as a fan, you look at it a bit differently. You're going to look at it differently than what Trev Alberts or how Trev Alberts would look at it. But I'm going to start with the stock down coaches for me, and then go with the stock rising coaches. One, Matt Campbell, who was way at the top of the list, I think, for a lot of people in college football. And a couple of years ago, I think Iowa State was really worried that they were going to lose him. They may not be worried now. They're 4-6, and they're not going to a bowl game. They were beaten fairly handily this weekend, I believe, by Texas Tech. or they've got Texas Tech and TCU left on the schedule, but they're coming off another loss and they're 4-6. They're going to have to win their final 2 games. They're probably not going to do that to get to a bowl game. So Matt Campbell, who was way up there for a lot of people, I think stock is falling for him.
Oh, big time. I totally agree. He's been falling. He's been off of my list for quite a while, probably 4 or 5, maybe even 6 weeks now.
It'll be interesting to see if some of these guys, though, have fallen from Trev Albert's list. I mean, probably a good athletic director, just because you lose a game, that doesn't mean your stock has fallen for them.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Trev's not playing a game.
No.
Trev's doing the job that he's supposed to do, which is finding the next head football coach at Nebraska. And I guarantee you he had a list when he took the job. He probably made some inroads, especially with the way things were going when he took the job, and had some idea of who he was going to be making phone calls to if he did need to replace Scott Frost. Obviously he does. And props to him too. The fact that there has not been wild rumors and speculations on a daily basis, it's been very.
Remember Steve Peterson? That was so bad. that was so horribly handled.
That was horrible.
Houston Nutt was coming. He was spotted at the airport. I mean, and we've had our rumors with this coaching search as well.
Yeah.
The Deion Sanders thing last week, and Eric Strickland shot that down. Great bit. If you haven't heard it, I believe it's on Twitter, with Eric going to his texting. And texting Deion Sanders and coming back during the break and saying, no, Deion says no, he's not coming to Lincoln, Nebraska, nor has he been asked to come to Lincoln, Nebraska to be the football coach. So he's stock falling because he says his stock is falling. It's never actually been up. Lance Leipold is one that's interesting to me. Yes, Kansas is bowl eligible, and now he's turning around Kansas. It's maybe the worst college football job next to Nebraska. Nebraska might be worse now that Kansas is going to a bowl game. Kansas was the only other school that had the longest drought of not going to a bowl. They're going. Nebraska is not. So, but Lance Leipold, his stock is falling because they lost to Tech this weekend, 43-28.
Well, and he's a great builder of programs. He's proven it. I don't know that I'd be, that's not going to be one guy that I'm going to be all rah about and be like, that's the guy I think we should. I don't know. But it's not my job to find the right guy. He's been on my stock falling list for a while.
Dave Aranda, stock falling. He was way up there for me, but Baylor loses to Kansas State this weekend, 31-3.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're one of the top defensive minds in college football, you probably shouldn't give up 31 points to Kansas State. So stock falling for me. And I would like Dave Aranda still because I think he would keep Bill Bush and Mickey Joseph on his staff.
Yeah, and Dave's been on my list the last couple of weeks. And again, this is all, it's the fun, wild speculation. It's why we call it kind of the stock market, because every little whim, every little story, every game, if you lose, then sorry, you're out. But if you win next week, we're going to put you in at number 3 on our most wanted.
I've heard a lot of people mention this name, Mark Stoops. Kentucky lost this week to Vandy. Vanderbilt hadn't won a game in conference for 26 straight games. But they beat Kentucky over the weekend. That's a big upset. Mark Stoops is still 6-4 at Kentucky. They're going to a bowl game, but 24-21 loss to Vandy is not good. If you were a big Mark Stoops fan, he might be falling a little bit on your stock falling list.
I would agree with that. That's an interesting one.
Brett Bielema is also on my stock falling list. Illinois loses to Purdue. They've lost 2 straight, and now they're going to lose 3 straight because they have Michigan this week. If you wanted Brett Bielema, and actually the last time when Nebraska was hiring Mike Riley, he was way up there for me. I thought, Brett Bielema is available. Go get him. And Nebraska didn't. Instead, they ended up with Mike Riley. So
that's a bad movie that writes itself.
That's a terrible, terrible movie. I don't want to see that movie again.
No.
Nebraska has to get this coaching hire right. As far as the stock up guys for me, Sonny Dykes. Nobody's talking about Sonny Dykes, but I mean, if you want to get out of the Big Ten because you're a little concerned about where that conference might be going,
Big 12,
or Big 12, you might be considering the Big Ten from the Big 12 because the Big 12, I know they are going to get a better TV contract than the one they currently have, and it's an agreement is on the way. But you might want to cash in on your success at TCU, number 4 ranked in the country. They just beat Texas 17-10 last night. Texas the 18th ranked team in the country, you might consider a job like Nebraska. Of course, the son of Spike Dykes, who had big success at Texas Tech.
That he did. My list of guys that I'm just kind of throwing out there, I'm going to bring Dan Quinn's name back into it. I like what he's done. He's got head coaching experience.
Formerly of Atlanta?
He was the Atlanta head coach. He's the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys now. And just wild off the wall. I threw him out a couple weeks back. Got laughed at and told I was an idiot. And I don't disagree with that statement, but I still think he would be an interesting hire.
Dan Quinn. That is one that I have not heard very often. Stock up for me, PJ Fleck. I know Nebraska, he would not go to Nebraska and he would not consider Nebraska. I just like the style of football, 31-3.
Yeah, but
you know they're going to run the ball every down, and yet they're still successful.
But you hate how much he hugs people.
I don't like him, actually. I don't like him at all. So there would be a problem with him coming here in that I don't like him, but I'd probably get over it because he would win. But they beat Northwestern 31-3. I like the way they play football. So his stock is up for me.
For me, I'm still going to go, even though he lost, I'm going to go with Lane Kiffin. Still stock up for me. He's such an enigma of a human being, and he has had success now. And I just think it would be.
Don't you think he would be
wild,
itching to get out of where? I mean, I just feel like he's a guy. He's never been anywhere for very long,
and I don't think he'd be here longer than 5 years if he came here.
Yeah, or 5 minutes.
True.
But I think that he's waiting for a big either NFL gig or a gig like Alabama when Saban retires, something along those lines. I don't think that he would come here, even though his dad coached here and he does have Nebraska connections. Number 3 on my list. This one is probably nobody is thinking about this name, or not very many people are thinking about this name. Kalen DeBoer. He's a Sioux Falls native. He played at the University of Sioux Falls. He coached there, I believe, as well. He's now at Washington. They just knocked off Oregon yesterday. They're 8-2. They beat Oregon 37-34. He has California connections in recruiting, but he also has Midwestern connections because he's a native of South Dakota.
He was on my list about a month ago, and he would be number 1 on my stock rising list because of the upset this week. So I just jumped to my number 1. But I completely agree. Kalen DeBoer is a guy that I think he needs to find a different place to coach, because who knows if Washington does wind up in the Big Ten or not, because they've been kind of rumored to. But if I was him and Trev Alberts called, I would take the phone call.
Absolutely. Number 1 on my list, Matt Rule. I think it's possible that if you're looking for a guy, you're looking for some sort of conspiracy theory, a guy that Nebraska may have already have an agreement with, it might be a guy like Matt Rule, in that hasn't been coaching for a while. It would be easy to get maybe a contract in place. Yes, he has a big buyout. What's it, $42 million, $40 million, whatever it is for Carolina. So you wonder about what would his motivation be at Nebraska? Would he care about coaching here if he's got a big stack of money that he can go count it every day?
See, and I don't think he is one of those guys that's wired that way, though. It just doesn't strike me. He's a guy that is he wants the challenge. He wants to be successful, and I think he will wherever he does land, and I think he's going to land back in college. I have him on my list as well as a stock rising guy for the last 3 weeks. I think he's been my number 1. And if Trev does have a guy, and contracts are signed or not, or nothing's obviously public, but if that is the case, that there is somebody that's already behind the scenes been notified they're going to be the guy, I think it is Matt Rule.
Let me ask you this. Whoever gets the gig, how big of a rebuild do you think this is?
Not very.
For Nebraska?
Not very.
I would agree with that. I think that you could get a guy like a Chris Kleinman or a Dave Aranda or whoever your favorite is on this list, and he could begin recruiting the transfer portal pretty heavily. I think you got Casey Thompson rather easily. You got, guys that can. I think you can get guys like Trey Palmer out of the transfer portal on a regular basis and pay them, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 and turn Nebraska around relatively quickly. Can you do that same thing with what we think is the biggest problem with this team going forward, the offensive and defensive line? How long would it take to turn around the offense and defensive line? I don't think that long.
No, if you can bring in, 2 or 3 guys that are NFL caliber, then it truly is going to be. I don't think it's that big of a rebound or a rebuild because there are a lot of pieces there. Trey Palmer, for as good as he looked against Purdue, he's looked beyond pedestrian the last 3 weeks, and the teams are playing him different.
Yeah.
And he's got to find a way to get open. At the same time, cornerbacks have got to find a way to throw the ball to him. When he's running 15 yards behind a guy, you can't throw the ball 20 yards in front of where he's at, so that he's got to stop and wait or even come back to get the ball. And then Trey's had a couple of drops here recently as well. But he's a guy, I think, after the Purdue game, there was a lot of us, I was one of them, that was thinking he probably is not going to come back next year. He's going to go ahead and head to the NFL draft. I don't know that he would now. And if Mickey Joseph is still on staff here, I don't think Trey Palmer is going to go anywhere.
Is he's a sophomore, but I don't think
I thought he was a redshirt sophomore.
I thought he hadn't redshirted. I thought he has to play one more year of college football. I could be wrong
Same here.
on that as far as Trey Palmer is concerned. I just look at the Big Ten as a whole and think there's not a great team. It's certainly in the West, and I understand the divisions are going away. But after Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, you can't say that Nebraska is that far behind Michigan State. You can't say they're that far behind Rutgers. They beat Rutgers. They beat Indiana. They were a one-score game versus Purdue. They hung in versus Illinois. They could have beaten Minnesota. That Minnesota game still sticks in my craw because Nebraska should have won that game against Minnesota, even without their quarterback. Iowa is beatable. Wisconsin, I think Nebraska can hang around with Wisconsin. Northwestern is terrible. There's 3 great teams in this league, and really 2. Ohio State and Michigan, and I think Penn State's on the outside, a little, 4 or 5 players behind those teams at least. Outside of that, this league is gettable.
Oh, big time.
You need to establish a culture. But I don't think the next coach would have, with the right coaches on his staff, a guy like Mickey, a guy like Bill Bush, he needs to go land of recruiters, but Nebraska has the facilities. They're going to have the best training facility, maybe in college football when it's done next year. NIL is something that Nebraska is certainly going to be good at doing. I think they've already proven that they're good at it, and they're going to get better at recruiting via NIL. I think there's a lot for this next coach to look at and say, this really shouldn't take that long.
No, and Vershawn Jackson, on the day that Scott Frost was fired back on September 11th, he stood right over there and said, this is an easy job. All you have to do is be good at coaching. You have everything you need. You have every resource available. You have what's going to be the premier facility when a lot of facilities are no longer going to get built because all the money is going to get funneled to NIL. You've got one of the best setups from an NIL standpoint. You got a fan base that is unbelievable, and you have the tradition. You have everything that you need. All you need to be able to do is coach football.
Right. Yeah, I don't think Nebraska's a year or 2 away from Michigan or Ohio State. I think they're at least 5 years away from those teams. But everybody else, with maybe the exception of Penn State, I don't think it's unattainable. I still point to what Mel Tucker did at least last year in a relatively very short amount of time, going 11-2. And he did it with transfers.
15 of them.
And 15 of them. And Nebraska did even more this year. They did 20, and it didn't work out. Hasn't worked out for Scott Frost, and it hasn't worked out necessarily for Mickey Joseph, but if he wants to be on the next staff, I think that he's certainly going to be there if he wants to be there.
Nebraska State Veterans Homes are here to serve veterans, their spouses, surviving spouses, and Gold Star parents. Join your fellow veterans and their families at one of our homes in Bellevue, Kearney, Norfolk, or Scotts Bluff. With a sliding scale to determine your financial contribution, an excellent clinical team, and plenty of fun activities, our homes are the perfect retirement choice. Learn more at veterans.nebraska.gov/homes. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force, and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is, my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately, in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakimick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide. My service never stops.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
For all of your concrete needs, call Kramer Concrete at 402-560-0670. Do you have a cracked driveway or sidewalk? Are you in need of an egress window or an awesome-looking new patio with stamped concrete? If so, call Tim Kramer at 402-560-0670 to get a free estimate. With over 20 years of experience, the Kramer Concrete staff specializes in concrete replacement, egress windows, and concrete patio design. Kramer Concrete is the low-cost solution to all of your concrete problems. Call Tim today at 402-560-0670.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
For all of your concrete needs, call Kramer Concrete at 402-560-0670. Do you have a cracked driveway or sidewalk? Are you in need of an egress window or an awesome-looking new patio with stamped concrete? If so, call Tim Kramer at 402-560-0670 to get a free estimate. With over 20 years of experience, the Kramer Concrete staff specializes in concrete replacement, egress windows, and concrete patio design. Kramer Concrete is the low-cost solution to all of your concrete problems. Call Tim today at 402-560-0670.
You had to know that when Wingstop set out to make a crispy, juicy chicken sandwich, they wouldn't make it in just one flavor. They'd make it in all 12, like lemon pepper, mango habanero, hickory smoked barbecue, and OG hot. So why have one new favorite chicken sandwich when you can have 12? Try the new sauced and tossed Wingstop chicken sandwich today for only $5.49 at Wingstop, where flavor gets its